Alright, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Season 3 of the Rule 34 podcast. I am Jack, joined by...
Dominic Castillo.
Giovanni.
Alright, so we are back. We are back after about like a week off or so. And as usual, it's due to reasonable reasons. You know. Dom, how have you been in that week that we've been gone? And kind of explain why we've been gone.
So, I've been doing pretty okay. The reason as to why, we've been a bit gone for a bit is because, work has been pretty hectic. Giovanni has finally now received and is now in middle of training of the new job at the crypto.com arena along with me. And we're currently going through the new season of the NBA and the NHL, which is getting a little hectic lately. I think Gio can definitely assert to how difficult the days have currently been. It's not been easy, but as we say, another day, another dollar. Aside from that, we've had our own little things to do. Monday we were scheduled to do a podcast, so I apologize for that. But I guess on the good side of things, I was able to pass my behind the wheel driving test. So that's Pog, I think. Aside from that, nothing much else has been going on. There's also, a little fun fact. The house next to my apartment is being tumbled down, so I apologize if there's any construction at the moment, because there's a huge bulldozer right next to us. Just to let the audience know.
And Dom, real quickly, correct me if I'm wrong, but a couple days ago, didn't Tommy's catch on fire?
Tommy's caught on fire? That I did not know. What?
That it popped up on my Citizen app. I think it was a couple days ago. I can double check it real quick, but yeah, it was some crazy stuff.
Jeez, I did not see this.
Oh wait, no, that's a different thing. Never mind.
I do know the building next to Tommy's did caught on fire. I believe a Prius was there. I'm pretty sure that there was a Prius that was there that did caught on fire, but I'm not sure about the building itself.
I think it spread to the building because there was a notification that it did catch on fire.
Interesting.
And if you live in this area of LA, you know that Tommy's is basically considered a historical landmark at this point.
Yes, it's been there, I think, for a good 70 years, I believe, or something on that. It's been there for a good while.
Yeah, man. Pretty crazy. What about you, Gio? How have you been?
I've been kind of exhausted. It's mostly it's definitely 100% mental exhaustion. Just having, because it's before the job, I would basically have all the time in the world to play video games, edit, and all that stuff. But now with the job, literally, I have maybe 2 hours before work to do whatever I want. And going from having 12 hours a day to game, only 2 is a huge difference. And it sucks so hard. And I don't know, just having to, find the time to do what I want with the job is being kind of mentally draining. But the work itself, it's an easy job. But the thing that sucks about it is at the end of the event when we have to clean up the suites. I hate doing that so much. And it's I don't know. It's that just ruins my vibe. Whenever I think about going to work going to work today, I don't think about the 6 hours of going back and forth, delivering stuff. It's the 2 hours at the end where I just have to be cleaning up after people. It literally makes me want to commit to
your work.
I don't know, to an institution to better myself. But besides that, I've been playing a lot of Overwatch lately. I've been loving the game.
Halloween update today, boys.
Yeah. I'm watching a live stream right now. I don't know, you guys are going to be disappointed, I think.
Well, it's basically the same event that we got all 5 years before, ain't that right, Dom?
It pretty much is. I think the Junkenstein. It's the same event over and over again. Nothing new.
Yeah, nothing.
What about you, Jack?
Me, I've been doing pretty good. How would you put it? I don't know. I've been getting a lot of different things done. I've been listening to a lot of music lately that I've kind of put on the back burner, but finally started listening to them. And I'm glad I have, because 2 recent albums I listened to, I was like, dang, these are pretty good. And I actually kind of hated that it doesn't sound funny. I kind of hated that I listened to them, because I just keep making it harder on myself for that end of the year list, because I got like, I want to say like 15 albums I'm looking at, and I'm trying to figure out what goes ahead of what for the top 10. You know, like what 5 albums are getting cut, and then what 10 albums are being arranged in what way. And then there's still, at this point now, because we're in the final weeks of October, there's still November and December to look forward to, which there's a lot to look forward to. We got Metro Boomin's album coming out November 4th, and we have apparently this week, the rumor is we're getting a Drake and 21 Savage collab album. A lot to look forward to. And other than that, I've just been living life, I guess you could say. I've been going out, hanging out with friends. I saw Black Adam. I went to Little Tokyo for a bit. Just been doing a lot of good stuff, and kind of just excited for this holiday season.
Dude, did you see that Home Depot is already beginning to do their Christmas decorations before Halloween even begins? That's crazy.
I saw a one-up you. I saw people selling Christmas trees already.
What? This early? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
The question is, are they more expensive? That's the real question.
Probably not.
Probably not if you think about it.
I mean, because by the time the summer rolls around, that tree's basically already dead.
Yeah. But so, I can't wait for next week. Or, well, if we record this Thursday, if these two aren't called into work early, this Thursday we should be doing a tier list about the holidays, which should be a fun one. And then Monday, being Halloween, is a tier list of horror movies we think we could survive in. But before, of course, not getting ahead of ourselves, focusing on today's topic, I guess the way to tie it in is, like I said, I watched Black Adam last week, technically now. And you know, Black Adam is a villain, but in this recent movie, they sort of painted him as like, I guess you could, how would you put it, like an anti-hero, not necessarily a vigilante, but you know, he's technically, he's a bad guy, but you know, the movie still paints him as like, he's a hero to some people, but not to, I guess you could say, like the rest of the world, I guess you could say. And of course that has to deal with the fact that, you know, he kills people, and that's not something heroes do, which was like a big point of the movie. And this kind of, I forget how long this idea has been brewing, but like Gio was the one to propose the idea to essentially discuss sort of what's been going on with the whole villain character throughout all medias, and kind of why we think, in a sense, just straight up why they suck. Because I mean, you do get good villains still. And Dom, if I remember correctly, you and I did an episode on this, talking about, you know, what goes into a villain and all that. And we talked about how, you know, it is possible to write villains that are good, that, like, you know, you have sympathy for. But I think even you and I made a point in that video that we're kind of seeing too much of that now, where almost every villain that's introduced has some sort of story that evokes, like, empathy or pity for them at the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
But so, I know, I was just going to say, if either of you want to start off with your thoughts, or if you guys have any specific examples that you want to shout out that you think are either a good example of a villain or like a bad example, or just bad execution on a villain's part, because I got a couple as well.
I have like a comparison that, I don't know if you guys seen like the Star Wars like the original Star Wars and then like all the new stuff that's been coming out.
Yeah.
So you'll know, because like if you compare like Darth Vader as a villain to like that new guy, what's his name?
Kylo Ren.
Yeah, because I saw like it's like because like in the original Star Wars films, like Darth Vader, he has like this overpowering aura around like the people he commands, and like you kind of like you see that he's the one in control, and because of it, and then like he like when he kills someone, it's not because he can't kill someone, it's just to keep the same I guess like the same reputation amongst like everybody else. Like if he kills someone to make sure everyone stays in line, but then if you see in the new films, like the guy kills, but it doesn't really do much for his character. He just like killed the person, but everybody like around him still like doesn't have like the same amount of respect for him. I don't know how to like. I guess like if you look at it like, because the whole rivalry between like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, like Luke Skywalker is like the protagonist, and he needs to overcome, become stronger to overcome the challenge that is Darth Vader. But then if you look at the new Star Wars films, you have the new girl, but the other guy, they fought like 2 times or maybe 3 times throughout the film, and the bad guy always loses. And it's like there's no like actual challenge for the protagonist to overcome, so it kind of like undermines the villain as a character, because he's kind of pointless. He's not stronger than the protagonist, because every time that he's fought her, he loses. So then that kind of just like, and that goes into the whole why a villain is like a powerful villain is important for the story, because if there is no powerful villain, then the story suffers for it, because there's no actual challenge for the protagonist to overcome. And then you see that in what's that, like not just in movies but like in video games too. Like in the God of War, did you guys play the God of War game?
I have not.
Well, in the like, I guess like the main antagonist of the thing is, what's his name, Baldur, and he's supposed to be like this invincible dude who can't feel anything, and he's coming after Kratos, because Kratos, his whole like legacy is, he literally killed all of the gods on Olympus, and he's like this powerful dude. So I'm gonna go challenge him to see if he's like powerful enough to make me feel pain, as pretty much his entire thing. So at first they fight, and then you're kind of like, yo, this guy's kind of like powerful, because like you have that initial shock when he punches Kratos, and then Kratos punches him back. He sends him flying, but then it's kind of like nothing is wrong with him. Like you're fighting him, but you don't see like any like physical damage being done, and then like it's revealed to you that he can't feel anything because of a curse that his mother put on him. It was not really a curse; he did it for like his well-being, but turned out to be a curse. And then at the end of the game, it's not necessarily the whole, we need to find a way to beat him or else we're in danger. It's like it kind of leads into the whole Kratos realizing that the cycle needs to be broken. So in doing so, and through like some other side quest stuff, you end up killing Baldur. But that wasn't like the main point of it. It was kind of like the purpose of Baldur was more character development for the protagonist than being an actual villain. So it's kind of like there's different. What am I saying, dude? I don't even know at this point.
I get what you're saying a bit, like that. I don't know. I guess, how would you put it in this way? I don't know. I guess like you kind of lose. I don't want to say you lose the plot of the story, but like you kind of do in that sense with the way you're describing it, because it's like you're adding all these elements in, and you're really just kind of confused as to like, I guess, what you're supposed to get out of that character, you know?
Because because if you think about it, in the new Star Wars films, the villain has no actual like. There's two purposes to a villain, either for for an obstacle that the protagonist needs to overcome, or just like a general threat to the safety of everyone or whatever. Well, there's more, but basically it's those two. And in the Star Wars case, it's literally neither of them, because the protagonist is already stronger than the new guy, and he has no he serves no threat to literally anyone. So it's kind of pointless for him as a character. But if you look at Baldur, from my example, he's not necessarily like a danger to anyone, but he serves for that character development or like that obstacle that needs to be overcome. So his presence is significant to the story. As to like in the Star Wars case, it's literally the story would be basically the same without him, because it's mostly just like the character realizing that like in order to be better, she needs to. What was the thing? Jack, do you remember what was like the point of her in that movie?
Honestly,
okay,
I really can't tell you, because I don't know. I mean the new Star Wars ones definitely weren't. They definitely weren't bad, but they were confusing in a sense, like how you're saying, where it's like you kind of like, again, and kind of like how I was saying, you don't really know what you're supposed to be getting out of this, you know? I guess like the later half of it was like, I don't know. I guess like the later half of the movies was supposed to be about like I don't really know what I can say for it. Like, I guess that you know, not everyone's completely lost to the dark side, I guess you could say. Because, like, by the end of it, Kylo does sort of turn back to the good side, you know? So I guess you could say, like, that's the reasoning behind it. But, like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of tough for me to say, because it's, like, I don't know. Those movies kind of left me confused a bit in terms of the overall story arcs of characters, you know? Because, like you said, he never really felt like a threat, and like the only time like he felt like a villain was when he killed his father, and it only felt like such a villainous moment because that was such a fan favorite character, you know.
Yeah, but well, what about you guys? What are like some examples of?
I guess a more recent one is Gore from Thor: Love and Thunder. I know we touched on our review, but like, I don't know, to this day it still kind of annoys me that like he got literally 0 screen time basically. Like, didn't they like sum up his total and it was like less than half an hour or something like that? Like, he barely got any scenes. Despite his title, we never saw him kill anyone except the first few minutes of the movie. And it was like, I don't know, I just kind of hate this whole thing where it's like every villain nowadays has to have some sort of sad backstory that makes you feel bad for them, you know? And like, I'm gonna contradict myself here because I loved the movie, but that was kind of the whole thing about Spider-Man No Way Home. You know, when they brought all those guys into his universe, it was like, oh, you know, not all of these guys are truly bad. They just need stuff to fix them, I guess you could say. But then it was like, this is kind of still like, obviously you can see it in a greater genre from this, but like solely looking at comic book movies, it seems like we've yet to get a villain that doesn't have this sort of like sad backstory that you're supposed to be able to understand, you know? Like, well, like almost in every Spider-Man movie so far, it's like the villain has some sort of backstory that like justifies or not justifies, but it explains their actions. You know, like in the first one, Vulture was a construction worker that got essentially replaced in his field by like they were gonna. Oh my gosh, man, it's so hard to remember the plots of these movies. But basically, they came in and basically took their job, and then in the second one with Mysterio, what's it called? With him, that whole thing was he made an invention just for Tony Stark to steal it, you know, and it's like you're supposed to be like, oh well, what a terrible move by Tony to just steal his invention, essentially take credit for it, and then give it a crappy name. I don't know. I guess right now comic book movies have really been kind of a hit or miss, especially with the villains, because sometimes they're good, but then it's like, for the most part, you're just like, why am I like, I don't know. There's too like I guess you could say it's saturated in a sense where there's too much of this. Let's give a villain a sad backstory, and it's like I feel like there isn't enough of straight up villains that you can just straight up hate, you know?
I feel like it has to do with well, I don't know how because it's like people want to like develop these like very complex stories and like make sure like everyone has like a significant character background instead of actually worrying about this like how the story plans out. Because if you look at like older films, like the plot was like, if you look at the plot of Terminator, Terminator, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, he comes back to the past to kill what's her name, Sarah Connor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to kill Sarah Connor because she's the mother of John Connor.
Yes.
John Connor, and then he's the one that leads the revolution against the Terminators, and they win. So he comes back to kill her, but then John Connor from the future comes back to save his mother from the Terminator. And it's a very simple thing, but then so that's like the beginning, the first Terminator. And then in the second Terminator, we see the same Terminator that we saw in the first film, but this time he's the good guy, and he's coming back to save a young John Connor from a different Terminator. And then his mom was like, no, he's bad. But then through the film, they developed this bond together. And at the end of the film, we see his iconic thumbs up into the pit, sacrificing himself to make sure that the other Terminator is dead. And then the plot is very we don't really we're not forced into a lot of information, who are the Terminators, who is Sarah Connor, who's John Connor, who are all these random side characters. We're not pushed into that and knowing everything that they did in their childhood. We're presented with the current characters as who they are now, and so we don't have to worry about understanding the characters in the same depth as in present movies, because we're curious to know more about the characters, but that information isn't presented to us in the film, and that kind of just adds to the story because we see this character now. And then especially the side characters, like that one black guy that sacrifices himself in the office, I always thought yo, that guy's pretty cool. But then he's also kind of irrelevant, so we don't have to know every single thing about him. We don't have to give him screen time. But then he tells about his children, his wife, and all of that stuff. All of that stuff is irrelevant. But we see a lot of that in new films. Every single person that we meet, we're suddenly shown their entire life for some reason, even though they do nothing for the plot.
Definitely. Dom, how about you? Any examples from you?
I have some examples as to the villains and like the backgrounds. I want to go back on the topic of video games specifically because there's like a plenty of villains that I have fond memories of. For example, like in racing games, like in Need for Speed Most Wanted, you as a main character get to know the villain, not because you don't initially know that they're the villain until they do something bad to you, which is kind of scary if you put yourself into perspective within like a movie trailer or a movie, like a movie set or in a movie, in a game or something like that. That you don't know that they're bad because they visually don't look bad until they do something bad. So within the game, you get your car stolen because like your vehicle like was like fixed per se. Yeah, so it was an unfair race, and you lose because of the race, and thus you get to know it's a bad person only because they won fairly, if that makes sense. But now you only treat him as a bad person because you yourself feel like, hey, that's not yours, it's mine. I want it, I want mine's back. But now you technically created a villain because you've lost, and now you see yourself as the underdog. When at the end of the day, you technically, how would you say, you created a villain out of nowhere, which is kind of a, how would you say, a perspective-based type of ordeal where you only make a villain because you yourself made the villain when they were trying to do something else in the meantime, if that makes sense. But that's only for like the video game stuff. But I think also, as well as I see with like movies and like with other things that I've been seeing, that a lot, well, as to what I've seen, a lot of these like villains and stuff like that have their backstories told to you, and sometimes they do resonate with you, sometimes they don't really, and sometimes, but sometimes you don't really get to see villains that just are angry just to be angry. You know, like they have their backstory and the reason as to why they're doing it, but you never see. Personally, I've never seen that many villains that are just there to to terrorize the city, just to terrorize the city, because they just want to, or maybe they're just angry, but for no reason to be angry per se. Also, as well as in video games, especially in video games, when you're coming against a villain, the antagonist, the boss level, I've always seen that there's always like a weak spot, and I'm not sure if there's always been weak spots in like movie villains and such as that, but I've always seen in video games there's always this one small little specific spot you're always supposed to hit. Especially in shooter games or like in fighting games, you're always supposed to hit this one specific weak spot that is never like covered up. It's always like exposed to the player. And like now that I think about it, how come nobody else has just figured out just to attack the weak spot, so as to and I have to go through the entire like a game per se, when you could have just made the weak spot first try, and you tend to win the game within the story. So I've always wondered why is the weak spot always, it's not always exposed, but if it is exposed, then why is it exposed in the first place when anybody any other person could just probably take it down? Also, other things with villains that have something to think about is, why do the villains mostly always just have I guess an angry demeanor? Like, that the villains because they act like a villain, but like, why don't they just? I'm not sure how to explain it, but they're a villain just because of their demeanor and the way they dress, the way they look like. But how come And I think color theory also definitely works around this. If you see some big guy in a video game, like in a movie, and they have red flaring around them, or something like that, that's the bad guy, right? But if it's like blue, like a blue, like aurora, or whatever it's called, it's like an ally per se, especially with games. So it's like
you're saying, there's no like shock factor to it anymore.
Yeah, because you already know it's them. It's like, oh, okay, it's the villain because he's got like a red tag on him saying, oh, okay, it's the villain. Oh, okay.
So, real quickly, I was going to bring this up later. There's about 15 minutes left, and there's 2 points I want to get out quickly. One is a question about who you guys think is the best villain, and another one that I want to talk about. I'm trying to think of which one I want to do first. I guess since we're talking about this, if you guys want to elaborate later after me, about basically who your favorite villain is. I think my favorite villain of all time, and I know a lot of people are gonna be like, well, I don't know how people feel about this, but to me, the greatest villain I've seen in all forms of media is always going to be Frank Fontaine from BioShock 1, and that's because it plays exactly into what Dom is saying, where, you know, you never really get the shock of like who's the villain. Like, you always know who the villain is right away and all that. And some of the best stories told are always the ones where it's like you only realize who the true villain was until like the very end. Like, you know, like those stories where it's like the hero finds out they were the villain all along and the stuff they were doing was bad and not actually good, you know? And that's how I very much feel about BioShock 1, because you go throughout the whole game thinking that, you know, Andrew Ryan is the villain. Andrew Ryan is the villain. You have to stop him. You have to kill this man. And along the way, and spoilers, by the way, I mean, the game's been out for years. If you haven't played it and haven't seen spoilers, surprising, but here's spoilers. So throughout the way, you're being guided by Atlas. You know, you're supposed to help him and his family get out of Rapture. You see the submarine where his wife and kid is supposed to be get blown up right in front of your eyes, and you're like, nope, we gotta go kill this Andrew Ryan guy. You finally kill him, all to just find out that Atlas is not who he says he is. And that twist of the game where he starts laughing, and then you just see the change from Atlas to Frank Fontaine, and you realize you've been duped this whole time. You've been playing into his game this entire time. Possibly one of the greatest twists of all time, and definitely my favorite villain of all time. And it just plays into what exactly Don was talking about right now, where I don't think anyone saw it coming, because this entire time, especially after seeing his, obviously I don't think they were there now that you like look back at the story, but seeing as you're playing through and seeing his family get blown up in a submarine, in no way in your mind are you thinking, oh yeah, this guy's the villain of the story, you know, he's the one that's the bad guy. I think that's what makes it such a great villain and twist. What about you guys? And then once you guys are done, I guess I'll share the final point, that kind of the kind of main point that I've been seeing a lot of people bring up lately, and I want to get your guys' opinion on. But what are some of your guys' favorite villains?
I think personally for me, I have two or three. My first would be Razor, going back to Need for Speed Most Wanted, because it was like a fan favorite. Personally, I loved like just like the sense of beating the main guy, and it's like the nostalgia factor of getting your car back and stuff like that. That was fun. I think from the Modern Warfare series, Makarov, I think that was a very cool thing. Modern Warfare 3, I remember playing Modern Warfare 3 and seeing you playing as Price. For the first time ever playing as Price. I think you played as Price before, but, you know, in the first perspective of playing as Price and the final mission, you know, wearing Juggernaut suits and stuff like that. It was one of the most coolest things ever. And then I don't want to explain how you destroy Makarov, because it's a bit explicit, but it's just that intense scene was so cool. And then Makarov himself being able to like destroy cities, cause an EMP, you know, in space, you know, that's crazy. And I'd have to say, I think maybe my favorite villain. Who would it be? I don't think I have one, but I don't know. I don't have a specific favorite villain per se. Just maybe some from racing series, but nothing of the grandiose. You know, nothing as much.
What about you, Gio?
I don't, like, the same as Dom, I don't have a favorite, but one of my favorites for sure. He's not, like, the true villain. I guess he could be the true, like, it depends on your perspective. But it's Charles Lee from Assassin's Creed 3. It's just, like, I've never been, like, so frustrated when playing a game just because of how much hatred I had for the guy. Like, in the beginning, you see him. Well, not really at the beginning, but at the beginning of, like, when Connor was like a young lad, you see him like nearby your village, and your village is all destroyed. All like a shitload of people are dead. Oh, I just cursed, my bad. And then, like, that's how, like, the initial hatred is, like, oh, he killed our family, he killed our mom. But then as the story goes on, you see it's actually Haytham Kenway who's, like, behind everything. And then, like, but you still have that hatred for Charles Lee. And, like, the thing that really did it for me is at the end, after the player kills Haytham Kenway, like, the father of Connor, who didn't actually need to die, but he sacrificed himself for Charles Lee so Charles Lee could live. That kind of just, like, makes, depending on, like, you know, how I said on your perspective. But for me, that really, like, pissed me off. So I wanted to kill Charles Lee even more. And then when you actually get to fight Charles Lee, it's like this entire sequence of, like, you fight him for a little bit, and then it turns into, like, you chase him down, and then you fight him a little bit more, and then you end up, like, he, like, falling, and he stabs himself, like, with a piece of wood or something. But then he's, like, he continues, like, on the run, so you have to go find him at a bar. And at a bar, he's just sitting on the table by himself, having a drink with a wound in his stomach. He knows he's gonna die. So when Connor gets there, he literally sits down next to him. Charles Lee gives him the bottle of, like, rum or whatever. Connor takes a drink. Charles Lee takes a drink. And then, like, you get prompted to get Connor to stab him in the heart. Or, like, to stab him, and, like, he stabs him. And then, like, that's how, like, that's the end of Charles Lee. And it was such a, like, a satisfying end to a character that you hate so much. Oh, dude, I loved it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. There was something I was gonna bring up. Dang it! I forgot what I was gonna bring up, but oh snap! There's 8 minutes of. Okay, so let me bring up this point that I saw someone recently bring up. So, people, with the series ending of Better Call Saul, people recently started rewatching essentially Breaking Bad all the way from the beginning, right? And you guys know Breaking Bad was filmed like what, late 2000s, early 2010s, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys know some of the stuff that was said, especially explicits and getting into territory of like slurs. And in one of the episodes, Jesse says the F slur. And I guess someone rewatched it and they were like, I guess they were like offended by it, I guess you could say, which, I mean, it makes sense, but like, you know, they were kind of like saying like, oh, how could a character like this say such a thing? And someone replied to them saying, you're literally watching a show about like drug dealing and all that. Why do you assume that any of these characters are good people, you know? Mm-hmm. And it brought up the point that like that someone made that I just really so much agree with, and that it's so many people nowadays try and come up with their own headcanon for characters and all that, and that they essentially lose what the actual character is, and instead they try and convince themselves of these headcanons or their own version of these people, you know, like they try and convince themselves that Jesse from Breaking Bad is some cool guy that would hang out with them, when in reality he was like he wasn't a good person, you know. He was, what was he, Dom? He was basically unemployed, living off of his girlfriend, you know.
He was obviously the drug dealer. Yeah. And, you know, and school and all that stuff.
They got multiple people killed in the show and all that, you know. It's like, these aren't good people, so why are you looking to them as good people, you know? And that was kind of something someone brought up, was like, you know, it's too much about, you know, it's too much, I guess, about having to connect with the audience nowadays, that you don't get these straight up villains. And it's kind of sad, because I wish there was more, because you kind of have to teach these people that as much as you want it to be a perfect world, there are terrible people in this world who commit evil just because, you know, like they don't have some sad reason as to, like, not every person in this world has some sad reason as to why they do stuff like commit murder. There are people in this world that will murder you for $10 out of your wallet, you know. There are people in this world who you get into an argument over with them. Let's say they cut you in line. they will shoot you over that. You know, they have nothing to lose in this world. There are people who do that. You know, that's how. It's sad to say, but there are people in this world who are truly evil like that. You know, who they don't need some sad reason. Oh, my childhood home burned down, or this person wronged me, so this is why I do this. They don't have reasons like that. There are people in this world who straight up are just like, I'll do whatever I want with no reason at all. And we've kind of lost that because you don't portray it in media. And the second point that brought up to kind of counteract why we don't see more of this that I somewhat agree with is someone was talking about The Boys, and they were talking about Homelander, and they were saying that, you know, despite this series and this character specifically being like satire, like commentary on a certain group of people, you still have people that don't see that and just look at the character straight up and then try and emulate, I guess you could say, that character, you know? And that's why you can't have these like problematic, straight up evil characters no more, because again, there's weirdo evil people in this world who, you know, don't see the actual story and character writing behind the character. Instead, they just see it and they're like, oh yeah, this guy's me, I'm like this person, and like, you know, it ends up too much a risk factor, I guess you could say, where it's like these people are emulating the characters without seeing the true meaning behind them, you know? Like, people are like people look at Homelander as like some sort of inspiration when the entire show is telling you, no, he's like delusional and all this, and like it's a commentary. I forgot what they said was commentary on, you know, but like those two things kind of got me thinking. I was like, wow, that's kind of crazy to think about, but like it's true, you know. We don't see too many actual people, just straight up not good people in a lot of stories nowadays, but it's for good reason, because you have too many people in this world who, you know, they're just, I guess, insane that they can't see that, you know, these characters and the meanings behind them aren't meant to be emulated or relatable to, in a sense, you know?
Cool.
I feel like it's because people, like, especially like the younger generation, they lost their like their sense of reality because of all like the violence they're exposed to. Because, I don't know, through video games, through shows or whatever, you know, like that's a different conversation. But they just kind of like, when they see something like, oh, that, like, look at all the people that died because of him, they don't like see like the actual like significance behind what it meant and all the pain that they caused. Because like, if you look at like the Ted Bundy show, there's like a lot of people on Twitter's like, oh dude, look how hot this guy is and stuff like that. And then there's like people actually dressing up as him for Halloween, or dressing their kids up as Ted Bundy,
or
not
Jeffrey
Ted
Dahmer.
Bundy, the other guy,
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer. There's like, and it's like, that's like a serious issue that people shouldn't be like.
I saw
what's
someone.
the word? It's not like, what's the word I'm looking for? Because it's kind of like
Idolizing?
Yeah, they shouldn't be idolizing people that, you know, like these people who did heinous things in history, but they're still doing it.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of people didn't, like, especially the families. Even Jeffrey Dahmer's father is suing Netflix for, you know, coming out with that documentary, because it's like, it makes it seem like he's the one that taught him all that stuff for that purpose, you know? And I saw someone dress up their kid as Jeffrey Dahmer for Halloween recently on, like, I think it was like Instagram or Twitter, and I was like, what is wrong with people? Especially doing that to a young child who knows nothing about what is going on, you know? Imagine him having to look at that photo later in life and just think, what the hell was wrong with my parents for them to dress me up as a murderer? And not just some cartoon murderer like Jason or Freddy Krueger and all that, but like a real life guy who committed heinous acts, you know? And people are ignoring because, oh, it's a trending topic in the world.
Dude, and it's also like during, I don't know if you guys saw like the Ted Bundy movie. Like, do you guys, like during, when he was caught and he was in jail, there was like thousands of people outside with like huge posters saying, oh, we love you, Ted Bundy, and stuff.
But,
to a little serial killer who went around killing women.
Jill,
and you're over here saying, we love you, bro. Like, what is wrong with you?
5 seconds left. Thank you all for joining for this episode. We'll see you all in the next episode.